Welcome to Skytech-Lens. Let's talk about Trump's tariffs. Those controversial taxes on imported goods that have been at the center of heated debates for years. These tariffs didn't just affect the price of everyday items, they rippled through the entire American economy, impacting businesses, workers, and even global trade relationships. For years, American ports bustled with activity as new tariffs reshaped the flow of goods. Factories and warehouses scrambled to adjust, while consumers and business owners watched prices and supply chains shift in real time. The stakes were high, and the uncertainty was felt everywhere, from small-town shops to Wall Street boardrooms. President Trump invoked the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, or IEPA, as his legal foundation. He argued that the nation faced an economic emergency and that extraordinary measures, like sweeping tariffs, were necessary to protect American interests. But this move raised eyebrows among legal experts and lawmakers alike, who questioned whether the law was ever meant to be used this way. Then, on August 29, 2025, everything changed. The U.S. Court of Appeals for the Federal Circuit issued a landmark decision, declaring that the president had gone too far. In their view, the use of emergency powers to impose broad global tariffs was not what Congress had intended when it passed the IEPA decades ago. The court's ruling was clear. Using emergency powers as a blanket justification for trade wars was built on shaky legal ground. This wasn't just a technicality. It was a direct challenge to the very foundation of Trump's trade strategy, and it sent shockwaves through the business community and the halls of government. But the implications went far beyond business. At its core, this was a question about the separation of powers, about who really gets to make the rules that shape America's economy. Is it the president, acting alone in the name of national security? Or is it Congress, the branch of government tasked with regulating commerce and trade? The court's decision pointed squarely at Congress, reminding everyone that the power to set tariffs and regulate trade ultimately belongs to the legislative branch, not the executive. The Trump administration, however, wasn't ready to back down. Officials quickly announced plans to appeal, warning that removing the tariffs could trigger economic chaos, hurt American industries, and undermine the country's negotiating power on the world stage. And so, a dramatic constitutional showdown began. One that would not only decide the fate of Trump's tariffs, but could also redefine the balance of power in Washington for years to come. To understand this legal earthquake, let's rewind. Trump claimed America faced a national security threat, not from missiles but from trade deficits, and used IEPA, a 1977 law meant for emergencies, to impose tariffs on nearly all U.S. trading partners. Historically, Congress, not the president, sets tariffs as laid out in the Constitution. By invoking IEPA, Trump bypassed Congress entirely, turning a legislative power into an executive tool. Legal experts and lawmakers warned this was a dangerous precedent, letting any president declare an economic emergency and tax Americans without a vote. That argument, that the president had usurped Congress's core power, became the heart of the legal challenge, and it's what brought the whole system crashing down in court. The Court of Appeals didn't mince words. The president can't invent tariff powers out of thin air, even in an emergency. The IEPA, they said, is about regulating financial transactions, not imposing tariffs. If Congress wanted to give the president the power to tax all imports, it would have said so. The court drew a bright line. Congress controls commerce and taxes, not the president. The ruling struck down the broadest tariffs imposed under IEPA, gutting the centerpiece of Trump's trade agenda. Other tariffs, like those on steel and aluminum, remain under separate legal battles, but the court's message was clear. At the heart of this case is the separation of powers, a principle that's anything but boring. The Constitution gives Congress, not the president, the power to set tariffs. The court warned that letting the president use emergency laws to impose taxes would erase Congress from the process, concentrating power in one branch. That's exactly what the framers wanted to prevent. Major economic decisions, the court said, required debate and consensus, not a single executive order. This case tested the major questions doctrine. Big decisions need clear, explicit permission from Congress. The court agreed. IEPA didn't give the president that authority. The ruling reinforced that the biggest economic moves must come from the people's representatives. These tariffs weren't just legal abstractions, they hit real businesses and consumers in ways that were impossible to ignore. For many, the effects were immediate and personal. showing up in the most routine parts of daily life. Whether you were a business owner trying to keep your doors open, or a shopper just trying to stretch your paycheck, the impact was everywhere. U.S. manufacturers struggled with higher costs for imported parts and materials, forcing some to cut back on production or even lay off workers. Meanwhile, companies like Switzerland's Thermoplan, known for their high-end coffee machines, shifted their manufacturing to other countries to avoid the tariffs, disrupting established supply chains and local jobs. Tariffs on Indian goods doubled, straining diplomatic ties and hurting businesses on both sides of the ocean. Indian textile factories, once bustling with orders from the U.S., saw contracts dry up, while American importers scrambled to find new suppliers or pay higher prices. For American consumers, the consequences were clear at the checkout counter. Prices for everything from groceries to electronics crept higher, as retailers passed on the extra costs. Families found themselves budgeting more carefully, sometimes having to make tough choices about what to buy and what to leave behind. The end of the de minimis rule meant even small online purchases from overseas faced steep tariffs. Suddenly, a simple order for a gadget or a gift came with unexpected fees and longer shipping times, frustrating shoppers and small businesses alike. In Mexico, factories that once thrived on exports to the U.S. were forced to lay off workers as their products became too expensive for American buyers. The ripple effects of these job losses spread through entire communities, affecting families and local economies. The global economy is deeply connected. A tariff imposed in Washington can mean job losses in Juarez, higher prices in Ohio, and uncertainty for businesses and workers around the world. Every link in the supply chain feels the pressure. The court's ruling may be about law, but its impact is felt in everyday life. From the factory floor to the family dinner table, these decisions shape the way we work, shop, and live, reminding us that policy isn't just made in courtrooms but experienced in the real world. The fight against the tariffs wasn't led by corporate giants but by small businesses like Voss Selections, a specialty wine importer. For them, the tariffs were an existential threat, wiping out profits and threatening survival. Unlike big corporations, small importers couldn't absorb the costs or shift production, so they went to court, arguing the tariffs were an unconstitutional power grab imposed without due process. They won in the Court of International Trade, and again at the Court of Appeals. Their victory shows that even small businesses can challenge and change government overreach. This wasn't about politics, it was about survival and the rule of law. Their story is a reminder that executive actions have real personal consequences. This case reignited a fierce debate. How much power should a president have over trade and national security? Supporters say the president needs flexibility to act fast in a dangerous world, and dissenting judges warned that limiting this power could hurt America's ability to respond to threats. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent insists the Supreme Court will back broad presidential authority. Critics argue the administration stretched national security to justify protectionism, bypassing Congress and democratic accountability. They warn that letting presidents declare emergencies to impose policy is a slippery slope. The real emergency, they say, is the erosion of checks and balances. The lawsuit is about ensuring the rule of law applies, even to the president. For now, the tariffs remain firmly in place. The court has decided to put its ruling on hold until October 14, 2025, meaning that businesses, importers, and consumers will continue to feel the effects for at least another year. This pause gives both sides time to prepare for what could be a landmark legal showdown, but it also leaves many in a state of uncertainty, unsure of how to plan for the future. The Trump administration is now taking its fight to the highest court in the land, appealing to the Supreme Court and setting the stage for a historic constitutional battle. This isn't just another legal dispute, it's a case that could redefine the limits of presidential power and reshape the way the United States handles international trade policy for generations to come. The stakes could hardly be higher. Trillions of dollars in global commerce hang in the balance, along with the livelihoods of countless American workers, business owners, and families. At the heart of the case is not just money, but the very structure of the U.S. government and the delicate balance of power between its branches. The Supreme Court, with its current conservative majority, will be tasked with weighing the scope of executive authority against the explicit powers granted to Congress by the Constitution. Their decision could either reinforce or dramatically limit the president's ability to act unilaterally on major economic issues. Central to the case is the so-called major questions doctrine. The justices must decide whether imposing sweeping global tariffs is such a significant action that it requires unmistakably clear approval from Congress, rather than broad or implied authority. Whatever the outcome, the Supreme Court's decision will set a powerful precedent that could shape the boundaries of presidential and congressional power for decades, influencing not just trade, but a wide range of future policy debates. In the meantime, businesses and consumers across the country are left in limbo, forced to navigate a landscape of uncertainty. Many are holding off on investments, hiring, or expansion, waiting for the clarity that only the Supreme Court can provide. As the nation waits, all eyes are on the 9 justices who now face the monumental task of drawing the line between presidential authority and congressional oversight, a decision that will echo through American law and politics for years to come. What's the big lesson? Checks and balances matter, even when they're slow and messy. This case is a real-world test of the Constitution's guardrails against unchecked power. If upheld, the ruling reaffirms Congress's role in economic policy and limits emergency powers. The story shows the real costs of unilateral executive action: higher prices, business uncertainty, job losses, and strained alliances. The wine importers fought not just for themselves, but for democratic principles. The court's answer: even in a crisis, the rulebook stands. The balance of power is fragile, and defending it is essential, especially when the sirens of emergency are blaring. Thanks for watching. Subscribe the channel for more updates.